The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Nice big round of applause. We'll shimmy into the Iberian FM phone-in. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Buona settimana. Lovely. Oh, they're still on the screen. Sorry, I meant to get rid of you there. You can stay for this. You weren't expecting to be there, were you? You get another round of applause. And I've been sitting there enjoying the music rather than doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which is giving you the right backdrop for this. There you go. That's better, isn't it? Love the idea, Bob and Veer. Very helpful service for fledgling prospective proprietors. Great stuff. Cheers, Squire of the Shires. Hit that like button. Some people leaving now, others staying for our conversation that has been prompted by President Lula of Brazil, and he's gone against foreign policy. I think it's caused some awkwardness for Portugal because, of course, they take a different view when it comes to dealing with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Lula saying, if you don't talk about peace, you contribute to war. We've got a couple of comments already in, thanks to Marcus, PT Country Bear earlier on, and to James. And we'll take a look at a news article about this. And if you want to call in, you may do that on 913-590-303. Let me get the phone in readiness and tidy up the screen, ready for your calls, should you want to call. But certainly do make comments in the chat or send them in on WhatsApp on 913-590-303. Get us on speed dial. And so you can make yourself heard on any of the issues. We take an open-minded, open-hearted approach to the issues of the day, and some of the things that you won't hear about on the news. This, of course, is one that you may have heard about on the news with President Lula of Brazil visiting Portugal at the moment. I understand on the way to Nazaré today. 913-590-303. If you want to get straight into talking about that, I need to make sure that the phone line is ready. Sometimes the Wi-Fi doesn't work in here, so I'll switch it over to mobile data. And one day, who knows, we might even have a massive sponsor who wants to pay for a special phone-in, maybe even a producer and someone answering the phones. I don't know. We'll find out in due course. Smash that like button, says T-Duck. And let's take a look now then at this Yahoo news article. Don't often use this news source, but this seemed to be pretty good in its approach. A little bit more objective than some I've seen. They were just outright criticizing President Lula rather than presenting the news about it. President Lula then, Brazil's Lula visits Lisbon at odds with Europe on Ukraine. And first comments coming in about it were from PT Country Bear. Who in their right mind thinks Ukrainians don't want peace? But if someone thinks anything other than the total withdrawal of Russian troops from all Ukrainian territory will bring peace, then they didn't learn much from the 2014 invasion of Crimea. Fair point. And interestingly, I think a distinction perhaps can be made there. Of course, who in their right mind thinks Ukrainians don't want peace? I suspect 99.9% of Ukrainians want peace. a pretty similar figure to normal human beings all around the world who want peace. Apart from those few Ukrainians, notably the leader, and leaders and people who stand to gain a lot by stoking war. And not just a Ukrainian leader, but leaders all over the world seem to have a much bigger appetite for war than the people whose countries they manage and lead. And I use the word lead very loosely. Not often sending their own children into battle, they're very happy to send other people's children into battle, and can gain quite handsomely from stoking and warmongering. So let's see then what is said here by Thomas Cabral, written on April 22nd at precisely 8:40. That's what happens on the internet, isn't it? You can say precisely a timestamp of when this was printed or when it was published and how long it takes to read. We've got President Marcelo here pointing a good picture, conveying perhaps some of the discomfort that Portugal is feeling with President Lula being in Portugal and saying what he's saying or taking the position that he's taking. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on Saturday was again at odds with Europe over Ukraine while pressing his first European tour since resuming office in January. Now, this man has been, I think he's been in Paris. He had 2 terms. Then he was involved in quite the scandal, wasn't he? And nearly went to jail for alleged corruption. Maybe this it will refer to that in this article. The veteran left-winger is seeking to revive his country's diplomatic ties after 4 years of relative isolation under his far-right predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro, who also may be heading towards Portugal as part of the right-wing gathering that's meant to be happening in May in the capital. That's Bolsonaro. But tensions have been on display with the West over Ukraine. On Saturday, Lula again called for a negotiated settlement between Kiev and Moscow more than a year after the Russian invasion. The Brazilian leader has angered Ukraine by saying Kiev shares blame for the war and has not joined Western nations in imposing sanctions on Moscow or supplying ammunition to Kiev. And I will preface, well, a bit late, too late for a preface, but it does seem that truth is one of the first casualties of war. There is something going on. There is the whiff, isn't there, of a proxy war here being fought out, I would say. That's my personal opinion. While my government condemns the violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity, we support a negotiated political solution to the conflict, Lula told journalists after meeting Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa in Lisbon, as you can see in the picture there. I'm assuming that is the meeting they've just had rather than a stock photograph or a library photo. We urgently need a group of countries to sit around a table with both Ukraine and Russia, Lula said. No, I'm with that. Brazil, I mean, because I do hear what you're saying, Marcus, PT Country Bear, but it doesn't seem to be working, does it? Demanding a withdrawal, which I assume is the United Nations position on this, and other countries, including the United States and the sort of German-led EU position on this, German and French, would be withdrawal. That's it, just withdrawal or nothing. Doesn't seem to be working. Whilst we're waiting for them to withdraw, people are being killed and dying in the conflict. So why not get around the table and talk about it? Brazil does not want to take part in this war. Brazil wants to create peace. Isn't that an admirable position for a nation's leader to take? Different position subheading here, as we hear about Rebelo de Sousa saying, President Lula believes the road to a just and lasting peace implies making negotiation a priority. Portugal has a different position. He's good at this, isn't he? And that would appear to show a respect for different positions and a willingness to talk, which I would applaud personally. Portugal has a different position, says the president. We think that for a road to peace to become a possibility, Ukraine must first have the right to respond to the invasion. Portugal is a founding member of NATO and was among the first European countries to supply tanks to Kiev. That's a fair statement. I'm not sure if they worked, did they? And they were quite ancient. But anyway, who am I to nitpick about that gesture? Lula, a 77-year-old former metal worker who served 2 previous terms as president from 2003 to 2010, has resisted taking sides over the conflict, neither with Europe and the United States, nor with China and Russia. Interestingly, though, he has been accused of taking sides by not taking a side. Isn't that interesting? And isn't that so much the timbre or tone of politics at the moment? where your critics and those you're trying to have a civilized conversation with, if you say you won't take a position or you have a different position, you get told you are X, Y, or Z, like a Chinese or Russian sympathizer, for example. It's quite the slur at the moment, isn't it? If you have a view beyond the narrative, as I will call it, the narrow narrative. He raised hackles earlier this month by saying Washington should stop encouraging the war by supplying weapons to Kiev. We know what happens with weapons, don't they? They kill people. They kill normal, everyday people like us. Whilst these, what I continue to refer to as sexually frustrated, power-hungry leaders use us as the pawns in this battle, accepting weapons and then blowing each other to smithereens with them. That can't be right, can it, in a modern civilized world? He also said that the United States and the European Union need to start talking about peace. If you don't talk about peace, you contribute to war, Lula insisted on Saturday. I'll take a brief pause there to see if anyone is chipping in with this at the moment. In July 2017, Lula was convicted on charges of money laundering and corruption in a controversial trial that was later nullified. Okay, so convicted and then what? Charges nullified in April 2021 and then moving on to become president again. And Russia wanted to preserve Ukraine's territorial integrity and refused requests from the Donetsk and Lugansk republics to join Russia. Germany, France, and Ukraine trashed the Minsk agreements, despite them being incorporated into international law by the UN. Thank you, Ancient Mariner, for that. Why? An aside here, why have Brazilian politicians all been in prison? I think that's probably an exaggeration, and I'm not sure they've all been in prison, but I get the gist of your question. The problem with Lula is that he hasn't been able to keep peace inside Brazil, and he wants to be the champion of peace for the rest of the world. Fair point. It is like someone not knowing how to swim and wanting to compete in the Olympics. Well, there you go. Minsk 2, says Ancient Mariner, and I'll refer you to his later comments on that. I was already thinking, was this? Hi, Victoria. From Joao, I was already thinking you were considering me to be invisible. I think that will be put right if she hasn't left already. Lula and Marcelo, says Joao, have two clowns under the same roof. Well, at least they only spoil one house. That sounds like one of those fantastic Portuguese sayings, does it not? Lula and Marcelo, two clowns under the same roof. You see, we can't leave it to these people, can we? They've got different agendas to us. Our everyday agenda as everyday human beings is that our children live in peace and would not be sent to war on behalf of these clowns anywhere in the world, right? As they sort out their sex-starved, power-hungry, narcissistic urges. This is far from straightforward. Well, of course, it's far from straightforward, Ancient Mariner. And in my humble opinion, you don't need to be humble here. This is the Iberian FM phone-in. And in my humble opinion, has very little to do with the well-being of Ukrainian people themselves. That I would applaud. I do see that, and so often the way in war, isn't it? And that's why I suggested it might be being used as a proxy war, as so many seem to be these days. And a way of, the way of, well, not the nation states necessarily, but powerful leaders with agendas having their way with the lives and assets of other people, spoiling the lives, the decent and good lives of other people with their agendas, destroying countries so that they might rebuild them again for their own aggrandizement and profit. Tabitha's here, everybody. We don't need your war. Feeds the rich and buries the poor. Exactly. Trust me up for battle when all I want is peace. Those of us who pay the price come home with the least. Wasn't that the Isley brothers? Lula attempted, thank you, we'll come back to the article. Lula attempted to run in 2018 in the presidential election for Brazil, but was disqualified under Brazil's Ficha Limpa law. Is that clean what? Ficha? Oh, we've got a call coming in to talk about this. Before the annulment, he was sentenced to 9.5 years in prison. We did have a call, and then that caller called off. Maybe they just meant to text me instead. 913-590-303, the number. Anyway, should you wish to. He was arrested in April 2018 and spent 580 days in jail until being released in November 2019. Thank you for that research. Still better than Bolsonaro. Maybe not, depending on who you speak to. But is that really a very good plaudit? when you have politicians claiming to be better, or when one claims that one politician is better than another. Still quite the cesspit we're looking into with those sort of comparisons. Not a mention of Ukraine since Sudan started. Even vultures get bored. Oh, Tabitha, but you're quite right. Is our gaze being averted elsewhere now? What's happening in Sudan? I noticed that British nationals have been, or the high-ups at least, have been evacuated. Other British nationals are complaining that they're not being protected or evacuated from Sudan. Lula needs to fix up their own house first. Brazil is one of the most dangerous places, probably more dangerous than Ukraine. Well, that's a very interesting point you make there. But it shouldn't, I mean, really, it needn't deprive him of the right to make such a comment. I think, we can't not make a comment because our life isn't in complete working order, can we? Or are you talking especially about the apparent hypocrisy of politicians? Anyway, let's get back to that article. Thank you, everybody, for your comments this morning. Really good. Envoy to meet Zelensky. After this, we're going back to the Yahoo News now, and a piece written by Thomas Cabral, sounds Portuguese, and written for the AFP and shared here, published here on Yahoo News. Let's go back to that article. And after a flurry of criticism from Europe, Kiev and I say Kiev now like everyone else does. I used to say Kiev. And I used to have a great chick in Kiev joke. I still do, but now is not the time, which accused him of parroting Russian and Chinese propaganda. Lula said on Tuesday that Brazil condemned the Russian invasion. He has condemned the invasion, to be fair. On Friday, he announced that he was sending top foreign policy advisor Cesar Amorim to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev after representatives of the Ukrainian community in Portugal met the Brazilian delegation in Lisbon. Brazil is determined to contribute to fostering dialogue and peace and an end to this conflict, the Brazilian government confirmed. So that's not a bad effort, is it? Wanting dialogue and peace and sending a top foreign policy advisor to talk to the president of Ukraine. Rebelo de Sousa's comments on Saturday were the second in days that took aim at Lula, who was recently named on Time magazine's list of the world's most influential people. Brazil's position at the United Nations has always been the same on the side of Portugal and the United States and NATO, the Portuguese head of state said earlier this week. And it's an interesting position, isn't it? When Lula comes and makes those comments, it is awkward for Portugal because Portugal at this level would appear to have its bread buttered by siding with the EU, the US and NATO, and not siding with Lula by saying, yes, let's all talk about this and negotiate peace. I think that might be a political and diplomatic shot in the foot for Portugal. And sorry to use that turn of phrase there. Despite their failure to see eye to eye on Ukraine, Lula and Portugal's Socialist Prime Minister Antonio Costa held a first summit between the countries in 7 years. Lula revelled in a special visit marking the relaunch of our bilateral dialogue. Bilateral dialogue. Like, is that just talking to each other after? You're in trouble, don't you, when it goes into that kind of thing? Like, what is it? Elon Musk's rapid dissembly or something. That was just a rocket exploding, wasn't it? After signing a dozen accords in fields including energy cooperation. Okay, so Lula, as well as having to face this heat, is here in Portugal to open up the bilateral dialogue again, and is signing dozens of accords, including energy cooperation, education, and tourism. Which way? Both ways? Is that mutual tourism to and from Portugal and Brazil? On Tuesday, he is due to address Portugal's parliament. Okay, when was this published? So it's tomorrow. He's in Nazaré today, day off today. Bit of a jolly up to the Silver Coast, I think. The Brazilian leader's trip to former colonial power Portugal will be followed by a 2-day visit to Spain. Excuse me. That's where I need a jingle to meet King Felipe VI. And Prime Minister Sanchez. Thank you very much, Yahoo News, publishing AFP article by Thomas Cabral there. Brazil's Lula visits Lisbon at odds with Europe on Ukraine. Okay, come back to your comments then. It takes great courage to be a leader with all the constant criticism, no matter who the... Sorry, you're making me cough there, Suze. No matter who the idiot is. Chinese propaganda. Anything I have been told I disagree with. Yeah, absolutely. We're on the same wavelength there. Do I need a jingle of coughing while I cough? Maybe a celebrity cough to replace mine. What's this? Who and how will anybody convince Putin to stop invading Ukraine? Well, yes, current methods don't appear to be working. I think we know Putin doesn't care. He does as he pleases. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And we are also being delivered a constant caricature, aren't we, that would cater completely to that sentiment. I'm not saying it's not true, but in the way that proxy wars work, the baddies have to be portrayed in only the worst light to suit a certain kind of narrative. So I'm not disagreeing with Mr. S, but I think we also have to be careful about portrayals of the the so-called good and bad guys, and perhaps enter into a more nuanced debate, conversation, at least among ourselves, and hopefully at the highest levels. We shall see. I was trying to make a point and a joke. I think you succeeded there. You get one of those. Squire of the Shire is still here for the Iberian FM phone-in. The West has done nothing to help the situation and more than likely has planned and perpetrated this obvious proxy war. Head and nail, Carl. Thank you very much, Tabitha. When you are a dictator, not a doctor, let's see if it works if you're a doctor as well. When you're a doctor with 200 billion and run a country, there's only one solution. Okay, when you're a dictator then with 200 bill and run a country, there's only one solution. Revolution, not for the dictator, for the people. Which leads us into another mention of tomorrow evening's. I mean, and this is so timely, is it not? Tomorrow at 8 o'clock, Memories of 1974 and Hope for the Future, Hopes for the Future. I meant that meant to be a plural there. We're allowed more than one hope for the future, aren't we? If you have to narrow it down to one hope for the future, what is it? To live in peace, as we're talking about this morning. And we're talking to Elena tomorrow night, along with Philomena, who may help with a little bit of translation, and certainly I'm sure will help on all sorts of levels tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. We will have a 25 de Abril special, Revolution special tomorrow. We found out that that's Diogo in the picture there, putting a carnation, which became the emblem of the revolution in 1974, thus making it the Carnation Revolution. And we will be talking to somebody who was there. Not necessarily on the streets of Lisbon, but certainly who was growing up around that time, a teenager. And let's find out also tomorrow evening what it was like to live in the subsequent years from Elena, who joins us as our special guest. So please join us for that. That'll be great, I think, that conversation. More comments coming in, and amazing timing, right? That it is the 49th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution. I wonder if President Lula will be taking place in a ceremony around that. And would I be right, João F., in assuming that Portuguese political opinion, or let me see if I can alliterate that even further. Am I right in thinking that the political the populace of Portugal and its political persuasion, no, not necessarily, but its cynicism around politics at the moment is, as we celebrate the 49th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution, perhaps an all-time high of cynicism, and it's not the best time to have a constructive, positive, and upbeat debate about the future of Portugal. Many people are just enjoying a public holiday. 50 years will be very telling, and it's going to be a spicy year ahead, isn't it, as we look at the performance of Portuguese politicians as we go into the 50th. It will be the 50th year we're going into, even though it's the 49th celebration, right? And then the celebration of the 50th on the 25th of April, 2024. How will that be, do you think? What an incredible backdrop to look at the politicians' performance when we do that on the 50th anniversary. My goodness, things moving incredibly fast in the world at the moment. Who knows what will be happening between now and then, the 25th of April, 2024. Thank you very much for your comments. More here. Dictatorships are fundamentally wrong. Vote for Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak instead. Making a point and a joke at the same time. That's what we like here on the Iberian FM phone-in. Yeah. How did they get into power exactly? And I think, people would understandably make a comparison perhaps between the lifestyles of British and Russian people. However, talk to people in a British food bank queue and compare and contrast them to a high up in somebody who's done quite well in recent times in Russia. And again, it becomes a more nuanced debate, does it not? We have to dispatch and do away with the stereotypes we have of Russia and Russian people. they are not all one thing any more than British or African people are, right? More nuance, more debate, more openness, and less of the being told you're just peddling, for example, Chinese or Russian propaganda, or you're far right. Nevertheless, one must be careful about who comes after the revolution. That's always the thing, isn't it, with these pesky revolutions? Yes, again, nuance, consideration, conversation might be a better alternative than just a swift changeover where, funnily enough, this is an observation I now have after 5 years in Portugal. It looks to me, and this may be coming up tomorrow evening on our conversation, that when you have a revolution that is a lot to do with people on the streets and quite the excitement and the passion and the fervor of apparently overthrowing one regime and moving into a new, more hopeful time for people with democracy. It's interesting to note, isn't it? And we can look at Truss and Sunak again here, that although there are changes at the front end, sometimes it would appear the back end is reluctant to change. It just goes quiet for a bit and then resurfaces a few years later. Did that happen in Portugal to some extent, I wonder? 49 years of democracy. How is Portugal coping with their politics? It's a good question, and not one to open up right now. We'll come back to that tomorrow night. And maybe we could do that tomorrow as a kind of preamble to the evening's conversation. Performance and politician, oxymoron, liking it. How about costs to earnings people are facing? Is that another? Oh, I've got a sore throat now. I'll call in tomorrow. Thank you. Actual benevolence in government. Yeah, how about that? What politicians doing their job, you might say. And vote for Ursula von der Leyen on what is not Borrell. They were democratically elected by the US State Department. I think you're liking this Iberian FM phone-in. It's an outlet, isn't it, for some of your closely guarded thoughts here. Until now, that is, Ancient Mariner. Benevolence would be great from government, wouldn't it just? And it is time for a review, isn't it not, of global government. And I shudder when I hear myself saying global government. I think that is the plan of many national governments to align themselves to global government. That seems to be the direction of travel. It's time for a review, if not a revolution. Is our national politics working? Do we not need the direction of travel to become more local rather than more global? Again, another debate or another question for another time where you could call in and talk with me about it on the Iberian FM phone-in on 351-913-590-303. Last couple of comments then. Younger generations, says Joao F, have not known what it is to live under the rule of dictatorship. Okay, yeah, fair enough. And isn't that great in one way that they haven't? They take democracy for granted and they are numb. Interesting, Joao F. They can't, it's not their fault though, is it? We hoped for that for them. And we have, I guess, tried to impart to them through lessons in history that they are lucky to be alive in a democracy. But when you're a fish, all you know is water, right? Corporate, says Squire of the Shires, corporate and hegemonic elites are trying to secure overlordship over natural resources of territories in Ukraine. And there, my friends, I suspect is a pretty erudite analysis of the situation. While there's a big old proxy war going on, the goodies and the baddies on the panto stage, behind the curtains, that is exactly what I suspect is going on. Well said, Squire of the Shires. Overhaul in capital letters. Everything needs one occasionally. It's been a long time overdue, isn't it? With a lot of national politics, certainly in the world I've grown up in. I have never known a government that I have voted for. In all of my 50 plus years, I have never had the pleasure, despite being told what a sinner I am for not voting on occasion. And then when I do, I've never had the government I've wanted. Anyone else in that position? Which might lead to an overhaul, mightn't it? You know, representation in politics. Has that ever happened to you? Not to me, it hasn't. Also, future trade, but I am strange like that. Also, future trade routes, i.e. the North Polar shipping route, Russia, China to the Baltic, then using the Dnieper River. Squire of the Shires, I'm liking this side of you that we don't normally see. And canal back to the Black Sea. There's some dollars there. Follow the money, honey. Well said, Squire. You see, so many people know this stuff, don't they? And that's why I say we have an open-hearted, open-minded discussion here and talk about the sort of things, agendas, expose ideas that you don't normally see on the mainstream, on the narrative, on the MSM there. Night all, thank you. Cheers, Suze. Me too, Squire. and vote. We knew it would come to this. You see, he talks about an overhaul, and then he subliminally brainwashes you into voting for him. The man who does like it, I believe, a little bit of benevolent dictatorship You see, he seeded that into the conversation, didn't he? Benevolence in politics. It went from, we need an overhaul, to benevolence in politics, and now look at this, vote for Lord Gilchrist. No, I need to see more of your manifesto, and that is not a euphemism. I find that I vote to keep one candidate out more than... That's a great system, isn't it? Again, I've seen this all my life, Suze, and I'm not happy about it. Thomas and Jefferson said, when the people fear government, dictatorship, but when government fears the people, democracy. So true, isn't it? Most people would be indifferent to the type of government they live under if only they could have confidence that their rulers were honest with them. Yeah, that'd be a great idea, wouldn't it? How about some Gumper dust in that dreamy moment of how life could be? And this is a sort of promise from a politician I'm so uneasy with. This and have you ever seen a grown man naked? I've got all the manifesto you can handle. On that note, let's leave it, shall we? And please try, maybe apply a cleaning agent to the eye of your mind to get any images that Lord Gilchrist may have put to you in his bid to become global leader, the benevolent dictator, Lord Gilchrist. Surely we can do better. See you tomorrow. Thanks for all your comments. Fantastic. We'll talk again tomorrow at 10 o'clock on the Iberian FM phone-in. Ciao for now.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked-in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.